My hands were shaking as I stood at the head of the table, looking out at my family gathered for our annual dinner. The warm glow of the candles and the smell of roasting turkey filled the air, but my mind was elsewhere. I had been noticing strange behavior from my wife, Sarah, and my brother, Alex, for months. They would whisper to each other when they thought I wasn't looking, and their conversations would stop abruptly when I approached. I had brushed it off as mere sibling camaraderie, but the knot in my stomach told me otherwise. The sound of clinking glasses and polite conversation filled the room, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As I scanned the table, my eyes landed on the familiar faces of my family members. My parents, beaming with pride, sat at the far end, while my sister, Emily, chatted with her husband, Jack, to my left. But my gaze kept drifting back to Sarah and Alex, who were sitting across from each other, their eyes locked in a way that made my skin crawl. The soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the occasional clink of silverware on plates created a sense of normalcy, but I knew that tonight was going to be different. The dinner conversation was stilted, with everyone avoiding eye contact with me. I knew something was wrong, but I had no idea what. That was when I saw it, a text message on Alex's phone, visible to me but not to anyone else. My heart sank as I read the words, "Can't wait to see you tonight." The number was Sarah's. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My jaw tightened, and my hands went cold. I tried to process what I was seeing, but my mind was a jumble of emotions. As the main course was served, the conversation turned to our family business, a small real estate agency that my parents had built from scratch. The smell of roasted vegetables and the sound of sizzling meat filled the air, but I couldn't taste anything. My mind was reeling with thoughts of betrayal and deceit. The real estate agency, with its sleek glass windows and modern decor, was a place where I had spent countless hours working alongside my family. But now, it seemed like a symbol of their betrayal. The rest of the dinner was a blur. I went through the motions, pretending to be interested in the conversation, but my mind was elsewhere. I was trying to piece together the evidence, to understand the extent of their betrayal. As the evening wore on, I noticed that Sarah and Alex were becoming increasingly uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact with me and each other. The atmosphere in the room was tense, with an undercurrent of guilt and deceit. When the dessert course was served, I decided to confront them. My voice was steady as I said, "I think we need to talk about something." The room fell silent, with all eyes on me. Sarah and Alex exchanged a nervous glance, and I knew I had them cornered. "I know what's been going on," I said, my eyes locked on theirs. "And I'm not going to let you get away with it." Sarah stepped back, her eyes wide with fear, and said, "I have no idea what you're talking about." But I knew she was lying. My voice was firm as I replied, "Don't play dumb, Sarah." I saw the text message on Alex's phone. The room erupted into chaos, with everyone talking at once. But I just stood there, my eyes fixed on the two people I thought I could trust. As the argument escalated, I realized that I needed to take action. I couldn't just sit back and let them ruin my life. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I decided to gather evidence, to build a case against them. I started by going through our company's financial records, looking for any discrepancies or suspicious transactions. And then, I began to investigate their alibi, talking to people who had seen them together, and gathering testimony from those who had witnessed their affair. And if you have ever felt this kind of betrayal, you already know what I was feeling in that moment. If stories like this hit close to home, subscribe to Karma Chronicles, because every week we tell the stories nobody else is brave enough to share. As I dug deeper, I discovered a web of deceit and lies that went far beyond a simple affair. I found out that they had been embezzling funds from our company, using the money to finance their secret trysts. I felt a sense of rage and betrayal, but I knew I had to keep my cool. I had to make sure that justice was served. The day of reckoning arrived when I confronted them with the evidence. The sound of papers shuffling and the smell of freshly brewed coffee filled the air as I presented my case. "You're going to pay for what you've done," I said, my voice firm and resolute. And then, I did something that would change everything. I called the police, and I reported their crime. The look on their faces was priceless as they realized they had been caught. The next morning, the news of their affair and embezzlement had spread like wildfire. Our company was in an uproar, with everyone talking about the scandal. My colleagues, Rachel, Mike, and Chris, approached me, their faces filled with shock and sympathy. "We had no idea," Rachel said, shaking her head. "We're so sorry you had to go through this." Mike added, "We're here for you, buddy. We'll support you through this tough time." Chris just nodded, his eyes filled with anger and disgust. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months, I began to rebuild my life. I started by focusing on my work, throwing myself into my job and using it as a distraction from the pain. And then, I started to reconnect with old friends, people who had known me before the betrayal. I also started seeing a therapist, someone who could help me process my emotions and move forward. It wasn't easy, but I was determined to heal and to move on. 3 months later, I was in a much better place. I had forgiven myself for not seeing the signs earlier, and I had started to forgive Sarah and Alex for their betrayal. I realized that they were sick, that they had a disease that they couldn't control. And I knew that I deserved better. The smell of freshly cut grass and the sound of birds chirping filled the air as I sat in my backyard, reflecting on the past few months. I had come a long way, and I was proud of myself for surviving the betrayal. As for Sarah and Alex, they were paying the price for their actions. They had been arrested and charged with embezzlement, and they were facing serious jail time. Their reputations were in tatters, and they would never be able to show their faces in public again. The sound of a door slamming shut and the smell of stagnation filled the air as I thought about their fate. They had destroyed their own lives, and they had destroyed mine. But I was rising from the ashes, like a phoenix born of fire. And as I sat there, surrounded by the beauty of nature, I knew that I would never let anyone betray me again. I would always be vigilant, always on the lookout for signs of deceit and betrayal. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the landscape, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I was finally free to live my life, to pursue my dreams, and to find happiness on my own terms. My brother's long-term fate was a cautionary tale of the devastating consequences of betrayal and deceit, a reminder that karma always has the last word.